Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Outdoors with Mr. White. I'm Mr. White, and we're outdoors. This morning I thought I'd do an activity that we are able to participate in even during COVID, and that's fishing. I thought today I would get out, I would show you some things, give you some information that may help you be a better fisher person. Okay, so we're outdoors. There are beavers behind me. I've seen 2 eagles today and some ducks flying around. It is an absolute beautiful place to be. I would much rather be here than stuck in my house. So let's not chat anymore. We're going to show you some things that'll help you perhaps be a better fisher person and see if we can't catch a fish. Now, boys and girls, before we get started, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you a few things that I have in my basket when I go fishing, and these are just suggestions, and I do think that if you carry most of these things, you'll be ready to tackle just about whatever comes at you on a fishing trip. The very first thing that you're going to need is obviously a fishing rod with a reel. Now, the fishing rod and reel that I have here are just, this is not a very long one. This is about a 5-foot rod, and that is just probably a little bit taller than what you would be, or about your height would even be good. This one here is about the same height as me, a little bit short, but I'm going to say that that's a good 5-foot rod. And this here is our reel. So our rod is here, and this part is our reel. And on the back of the reel, you'll see there's a little button. And these are the kind of reels that I would suggest you get. There are all kinds of different reels when you go to the store, but if you see one that's got a little button like that on the back of it, that's the best kind, because I'll show you in a few minutes how that thing works. And it's just got a little handle on it, and it has to have some line in there too. This is not string, this is line. This is very hard, and it's hard to break for us. So anyway, so there's our first thing we need, is our fishing rod and our reel. Another thing that you're going to need is some tackle. So what Mr. White has is I have a little box that's all full of some things, but I want to show you 3 things especially. The first thing I want to show you is a thing called a swivel, and this little swivel is something that you will need to tie on to your line before you can put all the hook and all that other stuff on. It just makes it easy to put your hook on and take your hook off real quick. The next thing that Mr. White loves to put on is a spinner, and it's kind of neat. It kind of spins around like that when it's going through the water, and it kind of represents a little fish, and big fish like to eat little fish. So if this looks like a little fish going through the water, sometimes the bigger fish will come and try to bite it. So those 2 things kind of go together. And then our last thing and most important thing that we have to put in is a hook. And let me get a hook out here. There's our hook. So our hook goes on there. So there's our swivel and our spinner and our hook. And they go kind of in that order, so that if I want to take another hook and put another hook on, I can. And I'll show you later how these things all work together it's kind of like a chain. So this is like step 1, step 2, and step 3. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about the hooks too. So those 3 things are what we need, what I would say we'd need the most for fishing around here in the places that I'm going to fish. And you can get quite a collection by the end of it of different things that you find that can be used. So anyway, that's my tackle box, and those 3 things are what we're going to talk about today. Another thing that I like to have is a couple of tools. I like to carry a little jackknife that helps me cut my line or cut down a stick or something that I might need, and it comes in handy. Another little thing is our pliers, and these are needle nose pliers. They're really small, and if I catch a fish, sometimes they help me take the hook out of the fish's mouth, and if a hook gets caught into my clothes or gets in my finger or something, I can use this to kind of pull it out. So these are handy little tools. It also helps when I need to repair my fishing reel. Sometimes things happen to your fishing reel, so this is a great little tool to turn screws and pull things out and pull lines out and things like that. So it's just a handy little tool that I keep in my fishing box. Now this little fella is a bobber, and this is an old-fashioned bobber. This is an old one, And I'm going to use this later, and I'll show you what this does. This actually goes on your line and stops your worm from sinking. It's kind of like a life jacket for the worm. It goes up the line, and when the worm is hanging down here, it floats, and this bobber stops the worm from going all the way to the bottom because it keeps it up. Okay, so it's kind of like a life jacket. Speaking of life jackets, here is a life jacket. This is my biggest thing, and I usually don't carry it around. I usually wear it if I'm going in a boat. But for kids, even if you're fishing on the bank by a lake or by a river or by something, it's really nice to put a life jacket on, and that way there, if you do slip and you fall into the water, you don't have to worry about going under the water and getting lost or getting drowned, because the life jacket will keep you up. So best to have one, even if you're not in a boat, if you're on the side of the water, anywhere near water that's over your head or even not above your head, it's good to put a life jacket on. So if you don't have one, see if you can get one, and then you'll be a lot safer. Mr. White would feel a lot better if you have one. Now, these two little things, this is some bug spray. Stop the bugs, because as it warms up, it's going to get buggier. And this is a neat little thing. It comes in a little pouch, and it just fits in my thing. But when you open it up, it actually is a big hat, and it goes over my head and stops the bugs when they're really bad from biting my ears and my nose and the top of my head and stuff like that. So, and it just simply twists and turns back into a small little bag, and I just shove it in that bag like that. And then it goes right back into my fishing basket. And there's the bucket, right? Something else that you may need is some suntan lotion, because sometimes when you're outside, I wear long sleeves, but sometimes when you're outside and you're fishing for a long time, you don't realize it, but you do get a sunburn. So it's good to have a little bit of that around. Sunglasses. Mr. White has a pair that fold up, and they actually fold right out to be sunglasses, and then they fold back up. These ones are free from someplace, so I just keep those in there in case I need them. And last but not least, one of the things that you will need is to look at some of the rules. And we're very lucky if you're under 16. So anybody that I teach that's under 16, you don't need to have a license. Anybody who's over 16 does need to buy a license from Nova Scotia. So all of the rules are in here. They give you this neat book, and it tells you where you're allowed to fish and where you're not allowed to fish, and what kind of fish you're allowed to catch and which kind you're not allowed to catch, and how many you're allowed to catch, because you're not allowed to just catch as many as you want. There's a certain limit, so they'll only let you have 5 fish or something. So this is full of all the rules, and if you're young and if you're only in school, you don't need a license. But if you are a mom or a dad, and your mom and dad are going to take you, like this dad here is taking his daughter, he has a fishing license and she doesn't need one, and the dog doesn't need one either. So this is just a neat little book that they'll give you when somebody buys a license, and I think they'll even give them to you if you don't have a license, just so you can know all the rules for Nova Scotia. Okay, boys and girls, I want to show you something right now. I'm going to show you a close-up of something that is kind of a safety rule for Mr. White. Now, here's our hook. And our hook has a little eye hole at the very, very top. And the eye hole there is where the fishing line goes through. So we're going to hook our line through that. The other end is the sharp part. And I'm pretty sure you can see that there. The sharp part comes up. It's like a letter J. Okay, it's just like the letter J. And then what it does is it has another little piece of metal on there that faces the other direction. And I hope you can see that. I'll kind of see if I can point it out in the video. But here's a nice little safety rule that mom or dad or somebody big can do for you to make this a much safer hook for you to play with and to fish with. Now watch. If I take this, I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to squeeze that little part right down there. There's an extra little hook right down, extra little spot right down there. Right down there on the end, if you can see that. And I want to push that, I want to break that off. I want to squeeze that, and you might be able to hear it. So if I squeeze that down, I'll tell you why I'm doing that. Oh, there, it just snapped. I could hear it. So Perhaps I'll show you a little picture here, right here. There. Now, what I've done is I've taken that hook, and where it came up to the J, there's another little hook coming down. I broke that off and I flattened it out with using my tool. So now this only has one point, and I'll tell you why I do that. If it ever hooks into me, it's easy to pull back out. If it has that little barb thing on there and it sticks into your finger, when it comes out, it hurts. I stuck one in my finger right there a few years ago, and I still remember. It almost made me sick. So now that hook is barbless, and it makes it easier to take out of the fish. Now, okay, boys and girls, what I want to do now is show you a little bit about the rod and the reel, because this is the most important piece of equipment that you're going to use when you go outdoor fishing. First of all, try to get a rod that's just about your height, maybe a little bit longer. I would say probably like a 5 foot for most of the kids in our school. Sometimes people get really long ones. They're really, really big. Maybe you're using your dad's and it'll get hard and get tangled. So try to get a rod that's maybe about your height, and then it'll be easy for you to handle. Now, the other part of your rod that's very important, this part is the rod, this long part, and then this little machine part here is called the reel. And that reel has a handle on it, and the ones that I recommend for you at school are the ones that have the buttons on the bottom. Okay, so now, and this little machine here is called the reel. So the rod, the reel, and then this here that comes out, you can see that. That's not called string, this is called line. And it's made out of a bunch of different things. Like this one here is a monofilament, and that doesn't matter. But anyway, this line comes out, and right now, the line is locked. I can't get any line out. I'm going to show you what I have at the other end for practicing. What Mr. White tied on this end is a cork, and it's just an old cork that I had around. So I just put it on with a zip tie, and it ties to my line, so it's really light. So this is great for me to practice with, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to pretend that this is my hook, or this could be my fish, or this could be my worm. It could be whatever. I could pretend it's anything. And it's tied to the end of my line, but I can't throw it out there. So what I want to do is I want to take my fishing rod and I want to send my worm way out there into the water. So I do this. But it didn't go anywhere. It's still there. Watch this. I've seen people do this. And you know what? It's not going anywhere. I can practice all day because my line is locked inside of my reel. The reel will not let any line come out. So I can't fish until I learn how to use this reel. Now, do you remember before I talked about this little button? This button is what stops the line from coming out of the reel. Okay? So what's going to happen is I have to learn how to let the line out when I want it to come out. I don't want it to come out here. I don't want to stand here and have my worm falling all over the place. So I want my worm and I want my bait, that part right there. I want this part here to stay until I'm ready to throw it out there where the fish are. Because the fish are out there where the beavers and the loons are swimming right now. And I want to get my worm out there. So now I know that the reel is locked with this button. So what I do is if I push on the button, you watch this. Watch what happens. You look at the end of the rod where that cork is, and if I push, it falls to the ground. Watch this. I can bring it back in. So it's not going anywhere. You look at the cork, it's dancing around, it's not doing anything. But as soon as I touch this button, watch, it falls. So what happens is when I push the button, all of the line comes out of the reel. And it will keep going, keep going, keep going until I don't have any line left. So now what I want to do is I want to bring that back in. If I want the line back in, I want my worm to come back to me, I turn the reel. Now watch what happens to the cork. It comes back in, and I can reel it right back up. I don't want to pull it too tight. I like to leave it about that far, about as big as my hand, away from the end, because if I pull it tight like this, then my worm, you see that? My worm's going to get all caught up inside the end of my fishing pole, and I don't like that. So I like to leave it out about that far, not any longer. If you put it out longer, you'll have some problems. So here's what we know now. if you want to practice, you put something on the end. You could put a little piece of plastic or a ring or something small that goes on the end, and then you can take your fishing rod and your reel outside and you can just practice. Nobody's going to get hurt with a cork. Okay, boys and girls, I want to show you what a clock has to do with fishing. Okay, so we know our numbers: 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And if you know all of those numbers, then you'll be able to know a secret about fishing. So let's take a look at this. I have two hands that are stuck on the clock. So here's our clock, and these two blue things, these are the hands that go around and around, and that's how we tell time. One hand goes to the 10 and one hand goes to the 2. And it's not about the time, it's about the location. So I want to show you something. 12 o'clock is straight up, 2 o'clock is over there, and 10 o'clock is behind me. So I'm going to stand right here in the middle, and I'm going to make my fishing rod be the hands of the clock. Okay, so remember, one hand on the 10, one hand on the 2, and I stand in the 12, and I'll show you what I mean. Now I want to pretend that I'm the clock. If I hold my fishing rod straight up, that means that I'm at the number 12. Now, if I go out here, that means I'm at the number 2. If I go 12 and 2 and 12 and 2. Now, I want to go back to the 10. So here's the 2, here's the 12, there's the 10. The 10 is back there somewhere, okay? So 10, 2, 10, 12, 2. So I can just practice that. 10, 2, 10, 2, and 12 is in the middle. 12 is straight up. Now, if you can remember all of that, that's going to help you a lot when you're casting. And casting is a skill that you need to have in order to fish. So let's just do that a little bit. Ready? 10, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2. You can do this out on your lawn. You can do this anywhere. 10, 2. Mr. White even does it in his house. Mrs. White doesn't like it, but I still try it. 10, 2, 10, 2. Now what we don't do is we never bring it all the way down to 5 or 6 o'clock. Sometimes I see people and they'll do this, and they hit their rod right on the ground. And we can't do that because the end of our rod is very small. And if we hit that on the ground, it could break. Now I'm going to show you how it all works together. On the bottom of your reel, on the bottom of most of the reels that I would recommend here, is that little button. Now, if I push that button, we saw before that the cork's going to fall. So if I do this, you watch. My stuffy or my cork fell. So here we go again. Watch. You keep your eye on the cork out there. I'm going to push this little button. It falls. So now the secret is timing. We have to synchronize. We have to make things happen at the same time. Ready? So now I'm going to push the button. And now look down here. I'm holding that button and I don't want it to fall, so I can move it all around. But whenever I let that button go, watch my thumb down here where I let it go. When I let it go, then the worm falls. So now I'm synchronizing. I'm making things happen at the same time. Push the button. Now it's not going to fall. It's not going to fall. Let's count to 3, and then we'll make our little cork fall. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And it falls. It's kind of magic, eh? Neat. Push the button. It's going to stay there. Push the button. Hold it for 1, 2, 3. Let it go. Whenever. Okay, boys and girls. Now we understand why the cork is there. And we have our rod. We have our reel. We know what the button does. And we know about 10 and 2. So now we're going to put all of those skills together and see if we can have some fun on the water. So I'm going to take my fishing rod and I'm going to put my thumb on the button, but I'm going to make it comfortable so it's behind me at 10 o'clock. I don't want to have it like this and pushing with my other hand. Okay, so I turn my reel around this way so I can do it with one hand. And this little hook is kind of neat because I can put my finger right in it. So I'm going to push at 10, I'm going to go to 2, and I want my worm to go out there. So when I get to 2, I'm going to let go. Okay, so watch this. I'll try it right here. Back to 10, squeeze my trigger. Oh, I heard it click in here. that means my worm's ready to fall. But I'm not going to let go. I'm going to hold on to that button so that my worm doesn't fall until it gets way out there. So now I'm going to go from 10 o'clock, I'm going to bring it up over my head, and when I go to 2, I'm going to let it go, and we're going to see if it's going to go out there in the water. Ready? It did. It landed in the water. I don't even need to practice this in the water. I could practice this on the land. I could be on my front lawn and cast it out. As long as you have something very safe on the end, and don't put any hooks on yet. Okay? Okay, boys and girls. Sometimes we don't have fishing rods and we don't have reels and all of that stuff, but you can still work on the skill. Here's what I'm going to show you. So I folded a piece of paper and I made a paper airplane. And you can go online and find all kinds of ways to make paper airplanes. I'm pretty sure that you could probably make one. But I'm going to use this paper airplane, this rocket, to help me learn how to fish. Okay? So when you're holding onto your rod, one thing that you don't want to do is when we're holding onto a rod and we're going to cast, we're going to hold our button back at 10 and we're going to push it to the 2 and then let our thumb come off and still hold on to the rod. Now sometimes what happens is you're holding onto the rod and you push the button, and when you throw and let go with your thumb, sometimes the whole rod flies away. And if it goes in the water, that's a dangerous thing. Okay? So what we do is we push on the rod, push on the button, and we let go with our thumb, but we have to hold on to the rod. So here's something that you can do to help you practice that. I have 2 pieces of paper. One is my paper for my rocket, and one is just a plain one. And I'm going to show you what I do to help practice learning how to cast. So I'm going to take this piece of paper. I'm going to crumple this one up. I'm going to hold this one in my hand, and you have to practice that. Hold it like that. So that's like the handle of my fishing rod right there. And then I have to put my airplane in between my finger and my thumb. So now what I'm going to practice is I'm going to throw my airplane and still hold on to this one. I don't want to throw and let everything go. So I hold my airplane. I have my little crumpled up paper there, and I'm going to pull it back to my 10, and I'm going to let it go to my 2. When I get to my 2, I let my airplane go, but I still have to hold this. Let's see. There. I held on to my paper, and I let my airplane go. Okay? Let's try that. 10, 2. Still have my paper. So I'm doing 2 things. I'm holding with this part of my hand and letting go with that part. So it's the same as when I'm holding onto my rod and I let go with my thumb, but my fingers still have to be working. Everything can't quit. I can't let everything go. I just let the button go and hold on to the rod. All you need is 2 pieces of paper. Put one in your hand, get the airplane out, keep practicing letting the airplane go and holding on. And then when you get a fishing rod in your hand, you'll be an expert. Let's get girls. Here are the 3 pieces of equipment that I want to put on the end of my line. Now that we've done a little bit of casting, I want to put these 3 pieces, and we've seen them earlier today. Here's our swivel, and here is our spinner, and here is our hook. And those 3 things together, to Mr. White, are very valuable. And they really work well for trying to catch some fish, especially the fish that I want to catch. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my swivel first. And you can see how it kind of opens up. It looks like a little paper clip that they use at school. So the paper clip opens up, and we're going to put that end inside this end over here so that they hook together. I'm kind of making like a necklace, like a chain. So now I've got my swivel and I've got my spinner. Now I'm going to take that spinner and swivel, and I'm going to lock those things together. And you might need an adult to help you do that, but some of you will be able to figure that out. I'm pretty sure you could. So there's my swivel. It's now locked, and there's my spinner. So if you look at the end of the spinner, there is a little spring, and it's open there. So I can put that part right inside the eyelet of the hook. I got to make sure that I don't drop my hook in this camouflage mud. Okay, so you watch. I'm going to put that through, just like that. Do you see how I did that? I just put my hook right over that metal. Now I close this and I slide. Now this is where you have to be careful, because if I slip, I'm going to stick that hook into my hand like that. But the good thing is I know that this hook will come out because it has no barb on it. I squeezed that barb, and that's why I did that first. So now I slide this down. I'd be very careful. This is a very good thing for moms and dads to do. Okay, so now I have all three hooked together, just like that. Hook, spinner, and swivel. And I'm ready to attach that to my fishing rod. So boys and girls, what I've done is I've cut our cork off and I tied a little knot, just a very simple knot around the top of my swivel. And if you're not quite sure what kind of knot, you can tie any kind of knot as long as you know that it's not going to come out. Sometimes if you have a nice big fish on there, that knot will slip right out, and I don't want to lose any nice big fish. So I've practiced and I've learned how to make some special knots, some fishing knots that will hold my stuff on there. So I've tied to my swivel, my line to my swivel goes to my little spinner, and that spinner is going to pretend it's going to look like a little fish flying through swimming through the water. And the big fish love to eat little fish, so that's how they eat. That's what they do. So that's going to pretend it's a little fish. And then I have my hook, and now there's only one thing left to do, and that is to put a worm on my hook and get it out there in the water. If you're easily grossed out, or you think some things are kind of sick, then maybe you might want to fast forward through this part. But I'm going to show you some things, some tricks on how to get these wiggly things on that hook without hurting yourself. Because for me to get that worm who's moving around like that snake on that hook is going to be hard, because as soon as I start to put it on, he's going to swing around. So I'm going to show you a little trick that my grandfather used to do, and I do it every day when I'm fishing, and I think of my grandfather every time that I do it. So I'm going to show you something. This worm is moving way too much. You don't like to see gross things or things like that, and maybe you should just fast forward. But I'm just going to slow this guy down, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to smack him, and it's going to stun him, and it's going to kind of knock him out for a minute until I get him on. So okay, so now he's wiggling, and I'm just going to smack him. Ready? I'm going to turn it over here. So if I just hit him like that, look, he's done. He's just laying there. So now I'm going to take my hook. So he's much easier to work with now. So it just kind of slows him down for a bit. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on just like I put a sock on my foot. I'm going to slide my foot. The hook is my foot and the worm is my sock. I'm going to slide it up, and I'm just going to keep on sliding that worm all the way on that hook. Just keep pushing them on. And this is the part that you have to be very careful not to stick the hook in your hand, okay? And I just keep pushing and slide, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Some people only like to put a little bit of their worm on, and they like to let the rest of it hang. And I always feel, no way, I don't want the fish to bite the end of the worm and not get the hook part, because what I want is I want the fish to catch the hook part. And you know what, believe it or not, even though I'm using a little hook, these worms will go all the way on. He's not going on there perfectly, but he doesn't have to be perfect, does it? I don't need him to be just like my sock. It can kind of be like if you were putting your dad's sock on or your mom's sock, and their socks are too big and they're kind of bunched up. That's what he should look like when he's done. So now look at that. That wiggly worm, he's starting to move around again now. Look. Okay, boys and girls, look. Now we have our hook and our worm and our spinner and our swivel all together. There's another piece of equipment that I want to show you, and that's the bobber. And this little bobber is a thing that helps your worm not sink to the bottom. If I throw that worm out like that, it's going to sink right to the bottom, and it might get caught in a tree, or it might get caught in the dirt or a rock or something like that. And sometimes things on the bottom will attack it, but I don't want anything on the bottom to touch it. So I have this little bobber here. Now the bobber, if you push it and you put your string underneath, your line underneath, then what it'll do, so now I've hooked it, and now my bobber will float on the water and keep my worm suspended. It stops him from sinking to the bottom. It helps float around the top. And it shows me when a fish bites, you'll see the bobber go pook, pook, and it gives me a signal so I can sit down and have my lunch, or I can relax. So let's put this in. Our bobber's on there now, and this is what it looks like. Push the button. Back at 10. I heard it click. I'm going to throw it out there, and we're just going to sit and relax. Now, if you look carefully, you can see my little red bobber floating out there. And now I just turn my handle a little bit, and that locks my line in there again, so it's not gonna, my fishing line's not gonna come out. And now I'm just gonna sit and I'm gonna wait, and I hope that we catch a fish. Boys and girls, I think we got a fish. Look at my bobber, it's gone. I'm pretty sure we got a fish. Watch the bobber. Oh, it's going down, it's going down. It's gone. Where did it go? Now, if I think I got a fish, I'm just gonna pull real quick on my rod like this. Ooh! I'm gonna reel it in and see if I got one. I saw the bobber go down, and that's what the bobber does. And now look, I can feel him kind of pulling. Look, boys and girls, my worm is all tore apart. There's bites all over it, look. Holy mama jingles. I gotta get him fixed up. Gotta get him back out there. I think there's fish out there. Boys and girls, sometimes when you go fishing, nothing happens for a very long time. That's why I like to listen to the birds and watch the things that are happening around me. And it's okay if you get bored, but it also teaches you a little thing called patience. And sometimes things don't happen right away. When the fish do bite, it's exciting. So sometimes I just sit here and listen to the crows and the birds tweeting around me, and I might see a beaver swimming or things like that. But I just sit down in my quiet space and I enjoy the outdoors. And if I catch a fish, that's a bonus. And if I don't catch a fish, I'm still outside in the fresh air, and I don't have to wear my mask because I'm not near anybody, and I can breathe so much better. Boys and girls, one thing I'd like for you to know about our area around Amherst is that there are two great places that the Department of Natural Resources actually put fish in the water. So if you go almost all the way to Cumberland North Academy, and there's a road on the left, it's called the Pumping Station Road. And if you go to that place with your mom or your dad or an adult, they actually put fish in there every year, and they keep the fish growing in there. And so if you go there, there's a really good chance that you can catch a fish there. That's an easy spot. And another place that they actually put fish in the water, Pliers Lake. And Pliers Lake is, if you know where the hospital is, just outside of Amherst, when you go to the hospital, instead of turning into the hospital, you turn this side, you go on the other side, and there's a campground there, and there's a big lake, and the Department of Natural Resources and the fisheries people, they put fish in that place too. And there's a couple of spots around there that you can stand on the bank. That's nice and safe. Make sure that you have your life jacket with you and put it on. And then you can stand on the bank like this, and you can cast out, and they put fish in there too, and some of them are pretty big. So if you go to those two places, you don't even have to leave Amherst and go very far. That's part of what our license, when Mr. White and the adults over 16 buy a license, the money that we pay for our license goes into those people in the fisheries departments. They go and they get more fish and they put them in the lake. So that's what we're paying for, a lot of that stuff. So when people say they don't want to buy a license, what they're really saying is they don't want to help support the fisheries. So if you buy a license as an adult, that money goes to the people who make more fish and put them in the water so that we can fish. So it's kind of cool. I think we got one. Look at that, boys and girls. Look, we finally got one. This is a speckled trout. Look at all the colors on it. Isn't he pretty? He's got red and yellow and all that stuff. Now I have to be careful not to touch him too much. So I'm just going to hold my hand underneath his belly, and I'm going to take out that hook. And it's pretty easy to take out because it has no barb. But there he is, look. He's only a little guy. I'm going to let him go back in the water. There he goes. He's gone. We got one. He made a real mess of my worm though, so I'm going to have to put another worm on. Sometimes just putting a new worm on makes it better because it's like fresh food. If I put a hamburger out for you or something like that and it was a couple of days old, you wouldn't like it. But if I give you a brand new hot one, that makes it a lot better. So let's go back at it. We got one. Let's try another one. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you had fun today watching. Maybe next day we'll run into each other out fishing. All you need is your fishing rod and your reel, and you have to have some worms, and you know some tricks now, how to cast, and all you need to do is get outside. Being outside is so healthy. I saw so many neat things today, and I hope you enjoyed it. What I want to do now is I want to wish you tight lines, and that means I hope that your fishing line gets pulled by a fish and keeps it nice and tight. So that's what we'll say after we go fishing, or when we want to go fishing the next time. Wishing you tight lines. I hope there's lots of fish on the end of your line. Take care, and we'll see you again. Thanks for coming to Outdoors with Mr. White.